So we had our first drive yesterday with the turbo Escalade, and it actually did pretty well. I think I can confirm my leak that I have from my tank. You can see a little bit of water dripping, and there is definitely a little puddle. So I probably have to pull the tank off and finish welding that guy. I also realized that I had a boost leak when I took it out because it would only make like 4 pounds, and it did this thing like, I feel like I can tell if it's a boost leak or not because it makes different pressure each time. So like one time I went out and it made 137, 38 kPa. Then I do another pull and it's down to like 125. So it's kind of inconsistent. So I suspected there was a boost leak, but I feel pretty confident in the connections, or I felt at the time pretty confident in the connections because there's only one coupler here and one coupler on the intercooler down there, and then it comes up to here. So I feel like there's not really a lot that could go wrong in those situations. The pipes are really close together. They're clamped really tight. So I was kind of leaning towards it being an intake leak, or leak somewhere at the intake. I did mention in the video I thought it could be the evap purge solenoid. So I looked at this thing and it was actually kind of loose. The bolt was just hand tight in there. So I must have loosened it at one point and then not tightened it all the way because I was going to plug it or something. So I ended up tightening that down, but I did take it out before I did that, and then I blew air through it and it actually was moving some air. So I capped it off, tightened it down, and then I went to the hardware store and I grabbed this bucket so I could put it over the turbo and pressurize the system. So I normally use these little like PVC caps that work pretty well. Cap over the turbo and then you can pressurize it. But this turbo is so big, it's almost a 6-inch outer diameter. It's like a 5 3/4 outer diameter. So I went and got a bucket, chopped the top of the bucket off, and then just hose clamped it right around the lip, and it actually works really good. Then what I do is use the air compressor, and then I just run a vacuum line in. And all I did was pop the line off the boost control solenoid so I can basically pump air into the intake and the whole circuit and look for the leak. So turn it up a little bit. Now we got air coming out. You can see that it's actually kind of pushing on the bucket, but it's not leaking at all around the bucket, and I just kind of feel all the way around all the joints. So nothing's leaking at all around any of the joints or the piping. But I can hear the leak and I can feel air way back here. You hear that? That's actually the rear injector, number 7 injector. All that air is getting pushed out. So the O-ring on the intake side is not sealing. And the number 1 is leaking. They're basically all leaking a little bit. So my issue, and it's probably going to be kind of hard to see, is the angle on the injectors. I did run into the issue up here where my fitting is hitting the alternator. So I have this set up the same way that I have the Ranger set up, and the angle on the injectors is pushed back a little bit, but it still works because it's a -8 fitting and not a -10 fitting. So this is a lot bigger fitting and it sticks out farther, so it doesn't make the bend behind the alternator, so it's pushed back a little bit far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition the rail and get them to come forward to where it's not leaking, and then I'll see what I got to do about that fitting. So the way I did these rails, I just have this little bracket, and then I flip it upside down, I bend it, and then it holds it down on the top. So I do have a little bit of room where I can kind of slide it around and then tighten it down. Like I said, this side is fine, doesn't leak at all because it doesn't have anything to hit. So what I'll do is I'll pull the alternator off, get it in the right position, and then see if I can get the alternator back down. So I have a couple different options. I could go to a -8 and then change the fitting up here, or I could cut that rail down and weld it on. I don't think I have to do that though. Or I could go to a Y and come in from the back and then just plug the front of the rail too. That's another option, but that's kind of more in depth that I wanted to do as far as a fuel system change. So let me pull the alternator off and see where we can get to. All right, so I was able to get the rail forward enough to seat the injectors a little bit better and get it to stop leaking. I did just modify the backing cover on the alternator. There's like a plastic shroud that goes on the back. I just kind of notched it out, and it was enough clearance that it doesn't hit anything, so I shouldn't have to worry about that. And I was able to pressurize it enough that it popped the tub off of there, and it sounded like a gun going off, scared the hell out of me, but it holds pressure now. Okay, so I did find the leak. There's like a little tiny pinhole. It's small enough I can't even get it on the camera, but it's right there. Oh, you can see it bubbling up when I spray the soapy water on it. So I'll go back through, weld that thing, and should be good. So I did re-weld the bottom of this tank, and it was sitting in there like this before, but I had a problem with it hitting the hood. You see that little divot right there? So it was actually hitting the tank when it was like this. It was hitting the top here. So I'm gonna kick this thing sideways so it goes inside this little recessed part of the hood. So I'm gonna have to re-weld a new section on there, so let's do that. So this might explain some of my idling and drivability issues that I was having before, because there was a huge vacuum leak, and I want to show you how big it is, or how bad it was. So I'm going to turn the truck on. I did warm it up. So watch how much the fuel is correcting. So it's warm enough. Pulling 40%. So that's interesting perspective. So I feel like that's going to fix several issues that I had. So I did have a point where on decel it would backfire really bad. So I'm guessing that's because it was really lean on that cylinder, overcorrecting and dumping fuel on the passenger side bank. I also had some idle surge and cruising issues that I couldn't really correct with fuel alone. So I'm guessing that's probably what that was, because it was leaning out again in that one side and then dumping fuel in, so it was probably just killing it, really, because one side was way lean and then one side's correcting too much and had too much fuel in it. Next thing I'm gonna do before I take it again and drive it, I actually wanna hook up the trans brake to the shifter. Instead of pushing the button for reverse, I want to just put it in reverse and then have it activate the solenoid to go in reverse. I feel like it's an Escalade, so I want to try to keep the theme of everything working properly. So I would like to just put it in R and have it go backwards. So what I'll do there is I'll tap into the neutral safety switch on the reverse circuit, and then I'll have that activate the relay, or basically I'll have it activate the trans brake solenoid to go in reverse. So I'll do that in the next video. We'll go drive this thing again. I'm kind of excited now finding that, because it was actually a problem. And I'm sure in boost it didn't really matter because it was just pushing all the air out. But anything in vacuum definitely would have been leaning out 7, 5, and 1. So I wonder if those pistons are hurt, actually, because it would have been really lean. So maybe I'll go in there with the bore scope. We'll check this thing out. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.